So how can you begin to practically and simply, in ways that resonate with you, how can you invite other people that God's placed in your life to kind of follow you and learn from you as you are following and learning from Jesus? It's what we call the Vision Challenge Tool, and it's based upon the teaching of Matthew chapter 4 that we'll get into in just a moment. But what I want us to do is to draw out this tool. Again, why don't you do that on a sheet of paper and follow along with me. This tool can help us remember and apply to our lives and ultimately know how to share this same concept with other people. All right? So let's start with this first one. Hemingway wrote a famous book back in the 50s, and what happened was at that time he was the most noted writer in all of North America. He was known in so many different places as this prolific, amazing writer. Perhaps you've read some of his stuff, The Old Man and the Sea and books like that. One day, a lady walked up to him, either he was on the streets of Havana or Key West, and a lady walks up and gives Ernest Hemingway a challenge. She said, "Do you think you can write an entire book in 6 words?" And that's an interesting challenge. So he goes home and spends a day and he thinks through it. And this is what Hemingway came up with. He said, "For sale, baby shoes never worn." So Hemingway, just with those 6 words, stirred the emotions and stoked the imagination of an entire nation. And what it represents to me is a whole lot can be said in 6 or 7 or 8 words. Now, I realize we're not talking about your story or mine, but we're thinking about how can we best talk to other people about inviting them into our lives, where we're issuing an invitation regarding discipleship. How do we do that in 6 words? You go, "Well, David, is there biblical precedent for this?" Absolutely. Matthew 4:19. So right here, you can just write this into these blanks. Here's Jesus' visionary challenge in 6 words. "Follow me and I'll make you fishers of men." So in that simple thing, Jesus had a unique way of inviting people into his life. Now guess what? When Jesus said, "Follow me and I'll make you fishers of men," who is he saying that to? He was saying it to a group of fishermen. When he was issuing an invitation to other people, he would somewhat adjust that calling statement. But it had to do with something that they could relate to, that they had a desire for, and yet Jesus was adding a different element. We know they were very interested in fishing. They were interested in getting even better at fishing. But Jesus comes along and says, "You know what? If you'll follow me, I'll show you. You're working on fishing for, fish, but I want to show you how to fish for other people." Okay? So that is a great example of Jesus using a vision challenge to people. So the big idea here is for you to come up with 6 words yourself. My visionary challenge in 6 words. How can you begin to be able to figure out, what's the specific value that you bring based upon the mission of your church as well as the mission God has given you? That's why I want to challenge you to craft a 6 to 8 word vision challenge statement that really reflects all the above. So let me give you some other examples of a vision challenge tool. In fact, before we do that, let me go back here for a moment. Your vision challenge statement to other people, I just want to reinforce this. It needs to relate to an area that they want to further grow in or they want to begin to do in some way. All right, so let's go to this next one. Here's some examples of a 6-word vision invitation. So here's one right here. You could just begin simply with something like, "I'd love to regularly meet with you and several others for a few weeks if you're interested in that. I'd like to help you find God's dream for your life and maximize your life." Maybe that's been something you've gotten really good at doing and can help other people. But notice in this, help you find God's dream for you and maximize your life. Well, most people I know want to maximize their life. I know other people, they're really curious about what's God's dream for their life. So that's an example of, in 6 to 8 words, being able to craft a vision challenge to a person that I already know, which we'll talk more about in the Persons of Peace tool. Here's another example. You know what? I'd love to regularly meet with you and several others to help you financially flourish and to help you further grow in your life of following Jesus. Now, maybe you've been through a lot of heartache and then have been through a lot of success when it comes to your finances. And so, I would think through a group of people that I work with or that live around me in my neighborhood or in my extended family. Who are the people that have a need to, and they're already motivated to financially flourish? So what you are doing is offering to do that as a unique invitation into your life and into your world. Here's another example. You know what? I'd love to regularly meet with you and several others to help you have a thriving business without losing your soul. Well, who would you say this to? You would say this to other people that have thriving businesses, or that want to have thriving businesses, and you yourself have learned how to have a thriving business. But we all know you can have a thriving business and even a ministry and end up losing your soul. That's why Jesus says, what does it profit a person to gain the whole world and end up losing their soul? So maybe a unique vision challenge would be, I can help you have a thriving business without losing your soul. Here's another example. I'd love to regularly meet with you and several others in order to help you notice God's goodness. I know that things feel really dark in your life. I experienced that myself. So how can we discover a further part of God's goodness? So those are examples right there of how to do that. What I want you to do is to think through what are those unique 6, 7, 8 words that would kind of form a cohesive statement of I'd love to regularly meet with you and several others in order to, what are those 6 or 8 words? Now, let me tell you about Dallas Willard. Dallas Willard, he was one of the most, foremost spiritual formation thinker in the last 40 years. He said this one time. He said the most important thing any of us can do is to not ask what would Jesus do, but to ask what would Jesus do and what would he be if he had my life, my family, my background, my 9 to 5. Isn't that a curious thing? Why is it that God's created me, David Loveless? Why has God created you, Joe Schmo, or whatever your name might be? You know, what is that all about? And so this is a way of helping us think through that. Who would Jesus be if he had my work, my neighborhood, my family, and my work contacts? Now, to move the words, works, and ways of Jesus from the church out into the world, we need to learn, each one of us, what it means to be, what would Jesus do if he lived our life today? Again, especially if he worked our particular job. So the phrase that you craft should express the overlap between what you know how to provide for people and then where people around you are wanting to go themselves, all right? So here's an example of this. I'm acquainted with a guy who's a realtor. I've been told he's probably one of the best disciple makers, in his city. He's a long-standing realtor in his community. He's constantly telling stories of disciple-making impact, because of these guys that are in his real estate office. He regularly shares these with his pastor. And so these guys from his realty world, they just want to learn from him. Now, this same guy is an amazing husband and father because of the things he's been through, hard things and good things. Guess what? Most guys would love to be an amazing husband and father. It's unbelievable how attractive his life is. He literally has 3 groups, realtor groups, he's meeting with right now that are guys that have real estate businesses, and he's helping them learn how to renovate and flip. So while they're renovating, flipping houses, he's able to pitch to them and say, hey, you know what? I can also not only help you renovate your realty business and other homes like that, but I can help you renovate just the marriage that you've got going on and your family. And the reason for that is because I've made some major mistakes in my own marriage, in my own family, that I've learned. God's taught me a lot through, and I can help you renovate in several areas of your life. So does that make sense? That's an example. Imagine, before we make one more pass at crafting this 6 to 8 word vision statement, imagine what would happen if a church was filled with men and women that understood and could regularly issue a call to other people in their everyday world that God's uniquely placed them, that expresses that overlap between what you know how to provide and where people around you really want to go. So my challenge to you is to use this tool, there's a vision challenge tool, and to write out perhaps for the first time in your life this statement that you could use in the future with other people to invite them into a further and a different kind of relationship with you. Either one-on-one or 3 people or 5 or 7 people, whatever that might be. So what's God saying to you in this tool?